Welcome back everyone. Now let's go ahead and talk about none other than the 2017 Retina Macbook Pro and see how it holds up in 2021. Now, to be honest, you guys know how I feel about these, 2016 to about 2019 MacBooks. There were a lot of issues that plagued all these MacBooks, which is really unfortunate. But what I will tell you is that they're still pretty good devices overall. And if you're going to use them, go for it. I will leave some MacBooks that I would recommend throughout this whole entire year linked down below. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, these MacBooks came in a couple of different variations. So they came in that base model, 13 inches, and those 15-inch models. Now, each of these models were a little bit different. There were 13-inch models with 2 USB 3 ports. There were other ones with 4. There were also the 15-inch ones with a lot of different configurations. But I'm going to hit on basically a lot of the commonalities between them. Obviously, if you want a more faster MacBook, the 2017 15-inch one would be the faster one. But you should probably end up getting an M1 MacBook or something like that, to be honest. Now, looking around the body, the design and everything is pretty much the same on either one MacBook that you get. You obviously have the Apple logo up top, which still looks beautiful. There's no problems there at all. It doesn't glow or anything like that, but I think a majority of people as of this point probably understand what this thing looks like, and they're probably already used to how this thing feels like in 2021 at least. Now, flipping this thing open, you do have the 13-inch or 15-inch model of these displays. Now, one thing that I've always said, and I've said this for years now, these MacBooks have beautiful displays. These displays on these things are perfect. I can't imagine a display looking any better than this, and I say that now, but watch like 2 years from now, these displays get way better. But these displays are awesome. They are probably going to be updated with the 14-inch and 16-inch models, the Super Retina XDR panels, whatever they're going to be. But these 2017 ones still have pretty decent panels for sure that still look very beautiful. A little bit of bezel around the panel, but it's not really that bad. Now, on the bottom of this specific device, you can see we have the keyboard, the touch bar is there as well. Now, the touch bar I think is cool. It's not really a necessity, but it's there if you want it. I'm glad this thing has it. But this thing's keyboard is probably the number one issue with this whole entire set of MacBooks going from 2016 to about 2019, maybe even early 2020 to be honest. The keyboards of these things are just the most faulty things ever. These were the butterfly keyboards at that time, and this was the problem. They would have random dirt or little debris get stuck in between the keys, and sometimes these keys wouldn't work. Maybe they would double click the keys. It was just a humongous issue, and I never really liked that issue. Nobody likes it. It was a very big annoyance for a lot of people. Unfortunately, this was one of those MacBooks that got plagued with it, both the 13-inch model and the 15-inch model. So this is probably the main issue, and why I would probably recommend everyone to somewhat avoid these MacBooks. I think they're still great MacBooks for the performance and everything, but the keyboard is the one issue that I just can never get over. Now, if you're going to dock this MacBook up to a display or something, that's different, because you can pretty much use a Magic Keyboard or a different keyboard, rather than the one built in. But I've even heard stories of people just completely dock their MacBook 99% of the time, but sometimes when they do go out, they'll bring it out with them, and even those MacBooks would end up getting issues with them. So even whether you use them a lot or a little bit, it'll get plagued with this issue eventually, and that was a pretty big problem in my opinion. Now, that pretty much covers it for the keyboard. You have that trackpad on the bottom, which is beautiful, one of my favorite trackpads from any devices ever. And on the sides, you can still see these MacBooks are fairly thin. They are not thick machines at all. They're very, very thin. Even the 15-inch model, they're still very thin MacBooks, which is beautiful. Now, you do have 2 USB ports on the base models, like I stated, but you have 4 USB ports on pretty much all the other models, and I think that's awesome. 4 USB ports is something I would prefer. My current M1 MacBook only has 2, and I really don't like it, but having more is definitely the better way to go all around. Now, that really pretty much covers it up for everything on the outside, the headphone jacks and all that stuff. No SD cards, no Ethernet ports, no standard USB ports, nothing like that. We're all on USB-C, but I think that's totally okay. USB-C is the future. We're already in it right now. Now, that pretty much covers it up there. Now, performance-wise, I think this is probably the number one issue, or the number one area where people are really wanting to go ahead and kind of improve their experience on. And with these specific MacBooks, I really never had any issues with their performance. Now, the base model 2017 ones, the RAM actually is one of the more interesting areas. It only goes up to 8 gigabyte. It starts at 8 gigs of RAM, but you can actually configure it up to 16 gigs of RAM, which is still pretty cool. And the current M1 MacBooks are still stuck at that same configuration. So whether you're going to get the 8 gig of RAM option or the 16 gig of RAM option, for the 13-inch models, we are still stuck there. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, you're really not getting any crazy big RAM improvements. Obviously, the RAM is probably higher quality on the newer ones, but that is a massive thing to keep in mind. On the flip side though, the 15-inch ones, I mean, these MacBooks I think are much more powerful than the 13-inch ones, so that's a big thing to keep in mind. The RAM starts at 16 gigs on the 15-inch models, but there is not a 32 gig of RAM option for those MacBooks. So I don't think that's a crazy big deal, but again, that is something to consider. If you need an insane amount of RAM on a MacBook, you may want to go up to like the 2020 MacBooks, the 15-inch ones, or the 16-inch MacBooks. Those are going to be able to get you better and higher quality RAM options than something like the 2017 MacBook. So that is something to keep in mind. But I've said this before, the 2017 MacBooks are still a really good performing MacBook. They're not slow by any means. And I think that's something that a lot of people actually look at. They'll look at these MacBooks and they'll think to themselves, because it is, a couple years older or whatever, that it's completely slow. That is not really the case. I just came off from using like a 2015 iMac, which isn't really that crazy performance heavy, but I also use a 2015 MacBook for almost every single thing that I did portable, not even like 7 months ago. And that was a very solid MacBook. Like, I had a great experience with it. Is it a crazy big deal? Well, it really just depends on what you want from your device. For me, I was editing a lot of videos, as you guys could see, and that MacBook held up perfectly fine. And these 2017 MacBooks are just even better than that. The performance of these MacBooks, I never had a problem with. I've said for a long time, these MacBooks were really good performing devices. My only issues pretty much came into the form of the hardware, specifically with the keyboard. I just knew that no matter how good this MacBook was, it was only a matter of time before something happened, before it became faulty, before the keyboard stopped working, and that was something that really bothered me. I love having a device that's stable, and I don't like having a device that, I know there's an issue with it and it's plaguing a lot of them and there's a recall program for it, and I don't want to be in the middle of somewhere and, my keyboard starts acting up and I can't finish what I started. That is one of my biggest fears, and luckily with these new M1 MacBooks, Apple switched away from it, but these 2017 MacBooks are plagued by it. So no matter how good the performance is, no matter what it is, you're going to run into issues at some point. So you have to keep that in mind. I think every single other thing about this MacBook is perfectly fine. The chipsets inside of these things are great. Again, if you want the higher end ones, get the 15-inch models. Dude, you cannot go wrong with the 15-inch 2017 models. But again, they're really not like a crazy, humongous big improvement from what I've heard from the 2016 models. There was a lot of thermal throttling that happened with these models as well. But if you're anything like me, you basically just do your work and you just move on. I don't really do a lot of gaming on my MacBook. I don't really expect too much from it. I just want to be able to edit videos and move on with my life. And the MacBook was able to do that perfectly fine. I was able to boot into Windows as well using their Boot Camp service, and that was perfectly fine as well. I made some videos on that and I had a great experience. Like I mentioned, I didn't have too many issues with that, but I do think the build quality of this thing is beautiful. It feels extremely relevant. Going from a 2017 or 2016 model all the way up to the M1 MacBooks that are out now, you're not going to see any differences from the outside. The only main difference is like the keyboard, which is a humongous difference. You're also getting a little bit of touch bar, a little difference there. But I think the 2017 MacBook still looks beautiful. There's no issues with it. And I think that's a humongous thing to keep in mind. I think this MacBook is still worth it for the most part. I don't think it's like the best MacBook. I really wish they spent a little bit more time perfecting that keyboard. Had they done that, this MacBook would probably be the one I would recommend the most. This one or the 2018 MacBook. These ones are solid devices for sure. It is just very unfortunate that Apple went ahead and went this route instead of sticking with something like a M1 MacBook. That was one of my issues. The keyboard is the main issue with the 2017 MacBook, but I think the performance is still fine. The RAM configurations are almost the same as the M1 MacBook, so it's totally fine for me. And I think other than that, this MacBook is probably still worth it if you're willing to just dock it up to a keyboard, and if you're willing to dock it up to a display and use it as, a keyboard or something like that, and use a third-party keyboard, or if you're not doing anything portable, or if you're willing to accept the fact that it may go faulty at some point. So that really pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.